It's clean, free, and virtually unlimited on most days anyway. That's why Governor Deval Patrick is trying to make hay while the sun shines with a new initiative aimed at doubling Massachusetts' solar capacity by 2020. But while it's easier than ever for homeowners and businesses to tap into the sun, it's still a tough sell in urban areas like Boston. WGBH News reporter Ann Mostue has more in tonight's Focus Report.
Old Colony Housing Project in South Boston was once a decaying 16-acre development. Today, it's being rebuilt and transformed with new siding, grass, and open spaces, and topped with gleaming new solar panels.
And our installation here at Old Colony is providing close to 10% or more than 10% of the total development's electricity.
The driving force behind the solar array is DeWitt Jones with the nonprofit Boston Community Capital, which fronted the $1 million cost to install and maintain the panels. And he says it'll take about 10 years to recoup that cost.
We actually own the solar panels. We aggregated all the different financial benefits, and we sell low-cost, fixed-price electricity from the panels back to the development.
The price of electricity for residents here is lower than what they pay the local utility company. It's a complicated setup, but one the city is encouraging.
This is really a cutting-edge example of bringing energy efficiency to an older public housing stock.
The governor has set a goal of 1,600 megawatts of solar capacity by 2020. That's about the same as 2 large power plants. In an effort to meet that goal, Brian Sweat says Boston is providing incentives for commercial solar installation.
Every sunsplash roof in the city of Boston needs to be looked at as a potential asset to put solar panels on.
But looking around the city, you don't see many solar panels.
I think it is an ambitious goal to have something on every roof, but eventually we will. Every building that has sun on the roof will have some sort of device.
Paul Lyons is a Cambridge engineer who evaluates commercial properties for solar installation. He says solar projects usually pay off in fewer than 10 years, and interest in urban solar is on the rise. Still, Lyons says only 1 out of every 5 consultations goes forward. That's because of the challenge of working in a historic city.
Structurally, many buildings were not made for the additional load on a roof, and it's very expensive to reinforce a roof.
Because the solar panels are very light, they have to be weighted down to prevent them from flying off in New England storms. So while projects like Old Colony are success stories, the growth of urban solar relies in part on new construction. Back at the development, DeWitt Jones says solar should be showing up on all kinds of rooftops.
For the solar revolution to be really successful, we need to make sure that solar is broadly and equitably benefiting all of our residents.
Boston and Cambridge are setting a goal of 40 more installations, starting with nonprofits and small businesses by the end of November. Hopefully, Mother Nature will cooperate. Ann Mostue, WGBH News.
So is solar in the city a realistic option for Boston homeowners? I'm joined now by Ian Bowles, a clean energy investor and the former State Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Welcome. Good to have you, Ian.
Thank you very much.
So in this state, solar really only accounts for about 1% of power generated here. Why is it still so on the fringes in Massachusetts?
Well, you put that in a larger context. Since Governor Patrick took office, it's more than 100 times what it was. So its growth rate is astronomical. It's been, at the national level, it's been doubling every year. So it and wind power are the fastest growing sources of energy. It remains relatively small. But what's interesting about solar is it's the one technology that really has the potential to be ubiquitous. You're not going to get into big siting arguments about where you have a wind farm when it comes to solar. I have it on my roof in Boston. I've had it for 3 years. It's terrific.
But it can be daunting, too, because while the sun itself is free, those panels are not. In fact, it can take 10 to 15 years to kind of recoup your losses. Now, in the case of Old Colony, they had an investor, so it wasn't costing the people who live there anything. But if it's me or you, that's a big investment.
It is, but the market has developed a bunch of solar lease companies that can give it to you for a 15-year lease at a little bit below your electric power rate. So you don't end up paying up front at all. You're paying a slight discount to your current power cost. So the industry has developed financing alternatives to make that first dollar cost, which used to be the big impediment, really no longer an impediment today. So that's, I think, also leading to a lot of the growth in the area.
All right, want to bring another voice into the discussion here? Rob Sargent. He's the Energy Program Director for the advocacy group Environment Massachusetts. So your own research shows that Massachusetts ranks like 20th in the nation, and your company has been, Boston, but your company has been really, really bullish on this. Why is Boston so far down?
Boston is in the ranks third in the Northeast for the amount of solar installed. And cities in general are uniquely suited for solar because, one, there's a lot of rooftops. Two, there's a lot of congestion in the electric grid and demand that can be offset by solar. Solar runs best on days when most cities, at least in the Northeast, need, or around the country, need power, which is on hot sunny days when air conditioners are cranking. So the value of solar is people are just figuring out how to capture it, and people are figuring out how to overcome some of these obstacles. The two big obstacles are, one, as you point out, the upfront cost, and the second is, for lack of a better word, the bureaucracy associated with it, and local and state officials, along with federal officials, that are developing programs to help streamline those processes. If you went to somebody and you said, a third of your power comes from natural gas or a third of your power comes from coal, and we're going to ask you to pay for all of the power you're going to get from coal for the next 20 years up front, you wouldn't be able to sell it either. So entrepreneurs and business folks, and in collaboration with thoughtful decision makers, are putting together programs that overcome these obstacles.
Right, I'm going to throw in a third obstacle on this, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to notice it. We've got some pictures of the Old Colony project, and this is a uniform project, and the rooftops, it all blends together, but the panels are ugly. And you're not going to see this happening in the historic communities in and around Boston, of which there are many, many. Downtown Boston itself, areas of Wellesley, it's not going to happen.
Well, I live in a 150-year-old Victorian in Jamaica Plain, and I have it on the hip roof and the top part of a mansard roof there, and it's very hard to see from anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of homes, there are some place where you could put them. And I also think, look, power plants for generations were put in poor neighborhoods, Fall Rivers, places like that. It's for people to sort of be reminded, you're using power, you're seeing where it's coming from in a solar panel. Many people need to make that connection. It helps us to think how we're going to have a lower carbon future. Many people don't see the panels as being so aversive when they think about what are my other alternatives.
Except they're not going to be allowed by historical commissions and architectural commissions.
If there's zoning that has purpose, which is to maintain historical significance, then there's plenty of rooftops, and most of the rooftops are not on places that are on the registry of historic places. So there's plenty of options, and whether it's the rooftops of big box stores or the rooftops of the three-deckers across the city or the south-facing roofs across the state, there's plenty of untapped solar energy, and it's, as you said, pollution-free with no fuel costs. So that is really the appeal.
Do we get enough sun here? We're not L.A. or San Diego or any of those places. Is it really enough? And it's so windy here.
The biggest solar market in the world is Germany, which is north of us in latitude. So, in terms of solar gain, it's a pretty marginal difference. Now, where it does make a difference is solar hot water. So if you're in the desert or Arizona where it's a lot hotter, then solar thermal hot water is more effective. But when it's producing electricity, the light difference between us and L.A. is relatively marginal.
Of course, and we need more heat, too. So we're much more energy consumers.
That's right.
Even with the air conditioning, isn't it?
Yeah, environmentally, the biggest thing people can do is insulate their homes as thoroughly as they can so they use less power to heat and cool themselves.
Just getting the work done, that's not a daunting project? Or are there a lot of companies who do the installs?
There are more and more and more, and they're driven by both the fact that solar is wildly popular, and people have figured out business plans to overcome the obstacles. And so I think what you're seeing is even though it's only 1% of the energy that we get, it is if it keeps growing at the rate it's growing, we're on track to have it be 10% within a very short period of time.
And meet the governor's goals.
Right.
All right, Rob Sargent, Ian Bowles, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Emily.